All right. Well, listen, thank you, folks, for coming out. I see a lot of familiar faces, and this public meeting is put on by the Thompson-Nicola Regional District as an information session for the public. It's to discuss the CPKC Cherry Creek derailment and the cleanup. This is a public information session. This meeting is for you folks to ask your questions, to hopefully get answers to those questions. And really, we want to move through part of this formal part quickly so that we can get to those questions. I just want to start by saying tonight's meeting will be recorded and will be available online for those folks that couldn't come to the meeting. It was relatively short notice, but we had to weigh that against getting information out there. So if you bear with us, you'll see it online tonight if you missed any of the questions. Big thank you to the Savona Community Association for allowing us to use this hall, and want to acknowledge that the TNRD connects with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district. And today we are located on the Skeetchison Indian Band territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the relationship we have with Skeetchison and respect the territory and land on which we gather today. Today, elected officials, we have TNRD Chair Barbara Roden, also Mayor of Ashcroft, and we have Electoral Area Director Tricia Thorpe, Area I, which would include Wallachine and Thompson Rivers Estate, and basically area west of Savona and Skeetchison. We have today with us MLA Lorne Dirkston. And Lorne is the Caribou Chilcotin representative, which is now our area here in Savona and Area J. And MP Frank Caputo could not be here. He's engaged in remembrance ceremonies this evening and, of course, tomorrow. And my name is Mike Grenier. I'm the electoral area director for this Area J, which includes Cherry Creek, Tobiano, Savona, and other parts of this area. We have with us Chief Daryl Draney, who is also going to provide us with a welcome and a prayer. Chief Draney.
Waar gewaai heb. Ik meedel met swappen gullig. Cooked by Daryl Draney, squaxed. Skeetston. Hello to everybody here. Welcome to our traditional territory of the Skeetston people. I'm the tribal chief of the Shuswap Nation Tribal Council. And I just like to, this is just a chat with the Creator. We're talking about everything that we're talking about here tonight and the protection of. It asks the Creator to, we thank the Creator for everything that He gives to us. In that chat, we talk about, help us to look after our people, all of our people. We ask the Creator to look after all the animals, all of the land, all of the water, and all of the food that's here that we get each day. We ask the Creator to also help us to be strong as we do this important work. And we thank Him again. Cook the kel cook me cook the tamius cook. Yak meet the why to stemmen alien tamiu. Yak meet the kelmuch, Miss Meskin, Spipioia, Sauslwa, Etlan Seatles cook. Knucker to cook, S. Yowds cook. Toch Chilam. Hey, did you hear the Creator phone me? He called me back there. Anyway, I'd like to put forward some opening remarks on how the Skeetchestons see it. The Skeetchton are we formally acknowledge the recent system failure that resulted in the derailment involving 21 cars and a spill approximately 70,000 liters of jet fuel, amongst other things. This incident represents a significant environmental and cultural concern that we're going to talk about tonight for our community and for all those who share the responsibility for the protection and stewardship of the lands and the waters. The affected area includes a lake that supports an active and interconnected ecosystem, home of thriving fish and numerous waterfowl that have established a habitat and home based throughout the surrounding watershed. This area holds not only ecological importance, but also deep cultural and spiritual meaning for our people of Skeetchton-Huluk, the Skeetchton home. Our community operates a hatchery, a fish hatchery, now carries an additional responsibility to assist rebuilding the fish that may or may not be lost in this, and restoring the balance to the aquatic ecosystem. This effort forms part of our broader commitment to care for and rehabilitate the land and waters, and that sustains all of us. We also remain deeply engaged in review of water quality reports and evaluation processes necessary to fully understand the impacts of the system failure. Transparent communications, data sharing, and collaborative decision-making will be critical in ensuring environmental accountability and long-term recovery. Our priorities to ensure stewardship and protect that livability of Skeetchton-Huluk, our home, are centered on the establishment of a foreshore agreement and a tripartite agreement with emergency management and climate readiness. These frameworks must provide clear guidance on how to mitigate, manage, and respond to future occurrences. We require and expect formal decision-making table to be created to ensure that our interests, particularly those tied to cultural integrity, ecological balance, Indigenous stewardship, are recognized and fully integrated into all aspects of the recovery process. Because that's our inherent right. Understand that this is mainly a technical review and an update, but I table this as a formal request to create a working table to address governance. We extend our sincere gratitude to Travis Abbey. I'd like this table to understand that Travis has a full mandate from Skeetchton to speak on our behalf, for his ongoing presence and commitment to ensuring that Skeetchton's voice and perspective are respected and included throughout the response and assessment phases. Together, we must work towards a comprehensive understanding of impacts, and a unified path forward that upholds both environmental integrity and the rights and responsibilities of Indigenous governance in caring for the land and the water. That would be my opening remarks. I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce our young and up-and-coming leadership, Andrew Karras, who's on council at Skeetiston. We also have Mike Anderson, who's on our negotiations team and advisor to Skeetiston, and also a part-time Savona member. So I'd just like to introduce those people. Thank you for hearing me, and thank you for really hearing our story.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Graney. Tonight, just a couple of... Thank you very much, Chief Draney, for those remarks. Tonight, just a couple of housekeeping items. We have a number of agency reps here tonight that will soon be introduced to share updates on their response, their area of interest. And so we're going to hold the questions until after the presentations, because some of the questions that you may be looking to have answered might be addressed as we go through the speakers. Everyone here has committed to stay as long as it takes to get everybody's questions answered. And so keep that in mind. There's no deadline. You won't miss the opportunity to ask your question. This meeting, I've mentioned, is recorded and will be available on the TNRD YouTube page for people that are unable to attend. I'd appreciate if you could be respectful during your presentations, the question and answer session. We are going to have a bigger audience, I think, with the video, and some of those people are going to be kids. So if you could keep your presentation respectful, that would be much appreciated. And we have DPS support workers in purple shirts. Where's the purple shirt people? A person that can offer mental health support for anyone in need. Feel free to approach our help worker here. I'm going to begin by introducing the people on the panel, and then we'll come back and each person will make a presentation. So I'll begin with Mike Lavecchio from the CPKC. Mike, if you could just put your hand up, that'd be great. Chris Raymond from Environment and Climate Change Canada. Dale Bull, BC Ministry of Environment. Dr. Andy Deli-Pisa, Interior Health. Purya Mojahedi from Interior Health. We have a number of TNRD representatives here, and I won't introduce them tonight, but I may call on them to answer some questions if it involves the TNRD. And I guess we'll start right now with you, Mike, if you could lead us off. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Lavecchio. I'm with Canadian Pacific Kansas City, CPKC. I have been on site for the past week, serving as liaison officer for this incident. Kevin Houle is with me tonight. Kevin leads our environmental unit for CPKC. The incident we're talking about tonight occurred on the evening of Saturday, November 1st, involving a mix of loaded and empty rail cars and one locomotive. There were no injuries, and a comprehensive, coordinated response began immediately. Two of the cars involved were carrying jet fuel and released product as a result of the derailment. That fuel spill has been a focus of our incident response from the beginning, and for the last week, the focus of our environmental response. From the first hour, our crews went to work to stop and contain the product spill. Containment booms went into the water right after the derailment, and booms have remained along the shore throughout the cleanup. Water testing samples began to be taken on Sunday, the day after the Saturday evening incident. CPKC environmental crews have been on site working with federal, provincial, local, and Indigenous responders on the cleanup of the fuel spill and the removal of the remaining rail cars. A little update on that. Crews today completed the removal of the last remaining rail car from site. Additional railway material remains to be cleared away, but the removal of the final car represents the end of our on-site recovery. Water sampling results have been coming in all the last week and have been immediately shared with provincial and local officials. Water sampling results remain below BC source water drinking guidelines. Water sampling is ongoing. We strive to have zero accidents and are very proud of our industry-leading safety record. However, when a derailment does occur, we respond with all the personnel and equipment necessary to execute an effective response and cleanup. We remain committed to the full cleanup of the impacted site. Thank you for being here tonight. Let me close by saying we look forward to seeing all of you at the CPKC Holiday Train Show here in Savona on December 18th. Please come out, bring a non-perishable food item for the food bank, and help us celebrate the season. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Chris Raymond, Environment and Climate Change Canada. Chris?
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me here. I'll start by saying Environment and Climate Change Canada takes pollution incidents and threats to the environment very seriously. When incidents occur, we work with all levels of government and First Nation partners to support a coordinated, effective, timely response. The National Environmental Emergency Centre, which I'm part of, NEEC West out of Vancouver, plays a key role in the event of an environmental emergency, and it's to provide and support consolidated expert environmental advice to the lead agency or unified command. In this case, Environment and Climate Change Canada, NEEC, because we are the response arm of Environment Canada, was notified November 1st of a train derailment with a spill of jet fuel into Kamloops Lake near Cherry Creek, BC. And we are currently working in a unified command structure with the responsible party, Canadian Pacific Kansas City, and the provincial government, Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, and BC MOE for short, as I know them. As I said, our key role is to provide scientific and technical advice, and we've done this throughout this incident. And what we've done is we provided initial trajectory modeling to see the fate and effect of the jet fuel on the lake. I think to date, we've provided about 4 models. We've helped identify sensitivities, ecosystems and wildlife to support response decision-making activities. And we provided staff who have technical experts, or who are technical experts in SCAT, Shoreline Cleanup and Assessment Technique. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Dale Bull from BC Ministry of Environment. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As introduced, my name is Dale Bull. I am a Senior Response Officer with the BC Ministry of Environment and Parks. My program, the Environmental Emergencies Branch, exists to respond to environmental emergencies of all types, such as this derailment. So we were notified of the derailment immediately after it occurred by CPKC. And we've had staff deployed to the incident right from the very start, with people deployed in the incident command post, in unified command, with CPKC and Environment and Climate Change Canada, and supporting the incident response through field personnel as well. So out there getting assessments on the beaches and in the impacts, and significant amount of remote support as well. verifying the work that's been done and that the plans that are produced to respond meet the regulatory requirements, as well as ensuring that both public safety and environmental health are appropriately addressed. Through that, we'll continue to work with all of our response partners in this event through the end of the emergency response phase and as we enter recovery. And we'll be engaged in this response until right through the end of recovery and what that looks like. Thank you.
From Interior Health, we have Dr. Andy Deli-Pizzi, and we have Purya Mojahadi. If you could welcome them from Interior Health.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. My name is Andy Della-Pizzi. I'm a medical health officer with Interior Health, and I'll let Purya introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Purya Mushtadi. I'm the drinking water officer with Interior Health.
So we work with Interior Health, which is the traditional unceded ancestral territory of 7 nations, including the Silks, the Tunaha, the Shewepum, the Inglapkama, the Statlium, the Silkotine, and Dakildani nations. And I think it's also important to recognize Article 25 of the United Nations of UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which states that Indigenous people have the right to maintain and strengthen their spiritual relationship with the land and water, and to maintain this duty for future generations. So with Interior Health, our mandate as medical health officers to protect the public, and we do so in various ways, including the statutory protections, the Public Health Act, where we protect public from hazards, and also the Drinking Water Protection Act, which protects public systems. It doesn't have any statutory protection over individual residences. It has to be public systems of more than one connection. So we've been involved in this spill response to kind of walk alongside all partners and do our best to find the best way forward for communities since the spill. Some of our response actions have included, there were reports of a fuel plume by Frederick residents. So we responded to that. We created letters, and with the TNRD, we delivered those letters electronically and to the community, advising them strongly to not use the water until we know that it's safe, and that we would help them determine when that is. In terms of the public systems, Tobiano and Savona, we have never had any reports of fuel plumes. The drinking water samples, I'll just review those as well. They're the raw water samples. So we have done, CPKC has done testing at the site of the spill and upstream and detected fuel on the surface on November 2nd, which resolved by the next day. So that was very reassuring. It resolved by the next day. All subsequent sample results provided to Interior Health at various locations and depths along the lake beyond the containment booms have shown no evidence of fuel contamination. So again, that's really reassuring to us in terms of protecting people from being exposed for their drinking water. This includes samples at community water systems identified in consultation with the regional district. So Interior Health will continue to review results as additional sampling continues. Testing at the intake of Tobiano and Savona water systems showed no evidence of fuel contamination. And Interior Health has reviewed these systems, both of which have water intakes well below the surface. So we continue to work with partners, and we will continue to provide advice to drinking water systems. And also working with all provincial partners, BC CDC, the Ministry of Health, to really organize a response now and for the long term as well. And we'll be happy to take any questions. Yep.
Thank you very much for that. So now let's move into questions. We have a microphone so that your questions will be recorded so that the people online can hear that. And we have Alex is going to walk around with that microphone. And if you would be so kind as to state your name and the community you're from, that would be very useful for us. And as I say, we'll be here as long as needed to answer all the questions. So we'll start. Anybody has a a question, put up your hand. I know that Chief Drainey is going to have a few questions, but we'll start with Barb Gale at the back with her hand up.
Good evening. I'm Barb Gale from Savona. I'm curious about what the cause of this derailment. Have you I know you're investigating it, but you must know a bit about what happened.
And
If you could explain that to us, please.
Thank you, Barb. I think that question should be addressed by CPKC. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the question. I'm going to start off by pointing out that CPKC has a long history of having the lowest accident rate in the industry, and we strive to have zero accidents. But when a derailment occurs, we seek out the root causes. One of the reasons we lead the industry in that important safety category is our commitment to fully analyzing the cause of every single incident. It's critical that we fully understand the cause so that we can work to prevent recurrences and reduce risk. We have seen reports suggesting a rock slide was the cause. That is one element which is being closely considered. That said, the cause of Saturday's incident remains under investigation. This is not unusual. You may be aware that it can take years for Transportation Safety Board investigations to be completed. Our investigation involves eliminating potential causes as well as naming them. That takes time. Our analysis thus far does not indicate, however, that there's any connection to other incidents along the main line.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Okay, next question. Gentleman over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane Gottfredson, Tobiano resident, former chief of Kamloops, former regional chief, tribal chief. You know, I don't think your answer really touches all the buttons. I worked for the railroad CN for 15 years. You know, if you're talking the cause was by a rock slide, that's really concerning when you talk about your safety record in your speech and even your question. I question, you know, the issues around regular track inspections, especially around our water corridors. If this was a rock slide and there was regular inspections, there would have been a flag that come up and would have stopped all of the traffic. My understanding also, and my question is, how much maintenance and capital has been put into this corridor to protect our waterways, to protect the community safety? That concerns me more than you coming out and saying, well, we have a great track record, we're leading the country and we're leading this and we're leading that. We live in this area, all of us. We rely on that water. Every single one of us that sit here drink that water. There's a major salmon stream that comes up here. And this year, this lake was full of fish. How much of an impact is that going to have on our watershed, our salmon habitat, the Kamloops trout? You know, so
two questions. Thank you for the questions, Chief Gottfredson. Two questions, one on the railway maintenance and the other is impact on fish. We'll start with the railway maintenance aspect.
Thank you for asking the question. We, as you know, have a long history of operating on this corridor. It is our busiest corridor between Calgary and Vancouver. We have a very robust maintenance program. But to your point, we are not yet ruling in or ruling out one factor. We continue to investigate, and we need to take the time to investigate it, as I just said before. So I take your points. We have the same questions. We are not yet at the point where we can draw that conclusion.
The second question was the status of the fish. I wonder if we could have a comment from Ministry of Environment or sure. Can we perhaps just answer this question, and then Chief Drainey, if we could, then if you have a question, you could follow with your question. Please go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to, help my brother out with some more, add to his question. And I thank him for the question. Right now, there's resident trout there. He mentioned that. There's resident sturgeon. Our commercial fishery has caught the sturgeon. There's 36 runs that run up and down run up that lake. In a couple of weeks, there's going to be steelhead that are moving in and stay there for the winter, not in the lake, but in the river. They'll stay there in the river until time when they need to move into the Bonaparte, and they need to move into the Deadman Creek. Now, he mentioned one of the biggest runs in the world is happening next year. But every year at this time, those fry leave the Adams Lake and they move into this stream. Right now, there's thousands and thousands of juvenile fry that are in that lake at this moment. There's Chinook juvenile in the lake right now, waiting to get flushed down in the spring at Freshet. They'll winter here in the lake. Dolly Varden, rainbow trout. The rainbow trout will spawn in the spring. But those are what's in that river. That's 10,000 years of our people researching that and figuring that all out. But that's what's in that lake right now. That's what's being affected in that lake. You speak of Frederick and you speak of the town of Savona. We speak for the Tamiu, the land and the fish and everything in it. Hope that helps you out.
Thank you very much, Chief Drainey and Chief Godfredson. Who would like to start with this answer? Okay, Ministry of Environment, thank you.
Thank you. We've spoken quite a lot about water samples and how that relates to human health. But when we come up with developing sampling plans, it isn't just about human health. It is done in concert with biologists and experts in fisheries. So while the samples do help inform decisions around human health and interior health would speak more to that, it does also inform the fisheries experts who can make decisions like that. Through the work that has been done to date, there has been no apparent fish mortality associated to this event that has been observed. With that being said, I mean, that is something that all of our field crews who are out there are continually on the look for, both terrestrial animals, birds, as well as fish. To date, there's been nothing that we've been able to associate to this event. So, I mean, that is positive news. Going forward, we will be looking at long-term monitoring and how that impacts the environment. I am not a biologist and I am not an expert in fisheries, but the Ministry of Environment, as well as our partners in the federal government, both at Environment and Climate Change Strategy, as well as the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, do have those experts who engage in the conversation and look to make sure that if steps need to be taken to protect any species are needed, that we can be advised and to take those steps. In this event, nothing has been advised, partially because of the sample results and the observations. But any steps that have been asked of the Unified Command to date, I think have been implemented. And so should something come up, if mortalities are observed or if there is something, we would address that as Unified Command at that time. Chris, do you have anything you want to add?
As Dale mentioned, they reach back to their biology experts. Same thing that we do in Environment Canada. We reach back to Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So not much to add to what Dale said other than the scientific and technical advice that NEEC brings to it. We take a look at what was spilled, Jet A1, and we look at the characteristics of that oil. When it enters the water, it spreads rapidly to form a thin film or sheen. It can appear silver, iridescent, or rainbow color. It's highly volatile, meaning it evaporates readily. It'll get rid of most of the light ends. If you smell it, it's in the process of evaporating. The fuel can interact with fine particulate and different things can happen. So what we did is we had SCAT teams, shoreline cleanup and assessment teams, go out to see where they can find the oil. Now, remember, I told you that NEEC provided a model. We provided a couple of models based on different volumes, and that model will not only give us our best guess of where the oil is going and direction-wise, but also the fate and behavior of this oil. Like I said, most of it will evaporate. The model turned out to be fairly accurate. We sent the SCAT teams to check the shorelines. We have seen shorelines that have oil on them, and now we're in the process of developing what is called shoreline treatment recommendations. The idea is to get the oil off the shoreline and put it back in the water. If it's trapped on the shoreline, it does not evaporate as easily and it does not break down as easily in the environment. So that's my addition. Thanks.
Thank you for those questions and answers. Next question. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to know, I'm Tom Parker. I live in Savona.
Thank you.
You always say that you were on scene in an hour. Is that from Kamloops, Cache Creek, Vancouver? How many people were on scene at an hour? I can't believe that you can get boats in water. And from where? Tobiano? Savona? But you say 1 hour you were on scene. Where is all that liquid gone in that 1 hour? Past the boats didn't get that little line float to stop it. How much went by before they cornered it? So you're saying about the rocks? I'm telling you right now, it'll be on the rocks. I've seen floats going down the lake. They were clearly, but I just want to know, the boats weren't in the water at 1 hour. So tell me how much got past the barricade before you guys got in the water? Because it's not 1 hour. Can't be.
Thank you for that question. Mike, could you please answer that? Thank you.
I'll take the first part of that question and then I'll ask Dale if you're willing to take the part about volume. So in terms of the deployment, we have a local office and we had officers on scene within that hour.
And I will say I may end up passing more of this question on down the line as we go, but I'll do my best to answer the first part. So the amount that was discussed earlier, that approximately 70,000 liters, is the amount that would have escaped the area before boom came in. So yeah, that is the amount that escaped. The modeling that Chris spoke about earlier is what kind of showed us where it went. And like you mentioned, you've seen it on the rocks. So like we know it's there. We have our teams out there assessing exactly where it ended up. And as Chris mentioned, those visual assessments that we've made out in the field actually do an excellent job of validating that model that Environment Canada was able to produce for us. It actually was very accurate, which gives us confidence in the rest of the information that model shows us, which talks about evaporation, how much would landed on the beaches, and how much would have dissipated in the environment downstream as well. I don't want to speak too much to specifics. I don't have that, and I'll turn it over to Chris if he's got some more details. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's blowing, so it's not contained to a certain spot. It's blowing. Our lake is wavy, like unreal.
Yep. And so I'm just going to restate the question because of the microphone, so that way it can be heard. So the question is just in relation to the wind and the natural waves and other environmental effects on the lake. Kamloops Lake is very long. It does get quite windy, and we've seen that in the last few days. And you're correct. The wind was probably the biggest factor in how the product moved from the incident site to the beaches where we're seeing it on now. And continue to be a factor. Well, it was the primary thing that moved the product away from the incident site and onto the beaches. That weathering is actually very beneficial to the response. It encourages breakdown of the oils to make it easier to evaporate. I mean, if you imagine kind of throwing something up in the air, it disperses much easier, it evaporates much easier. So the more wind and the more wave action that actually hits it, it has encouraged that evaporative property and probably benefited the response more than calm weather could have. A nice hot day would have been nice, but it's November, so we didn't get everything we could have hoped for, but I'll turn it over to Chris to talk more about the model itself.
Yeah, our modelers took into account the wind, and we produced several models at different volumes as well as at different release rates to give us an idea where it might go. So we did take into account the wind, and we are now collecting information on the actual current of the river with our response partners to see the river coming in and the lake itself to see if we can make that our model a little bit more accurate. And also, not only does it show where the oil is likely to go, it will take into account, based on the characteristics of the oil, how much would evaporate, how much would disperse in the water column, and how much will go ashore. So we based our response actions on that model. Then we also have what is referred to as NASP, the National Aerial Surveillance Program. Just flew over this afternoon. Big red plane. It's equipped with special cameras and special equipment that can locate oil on water. And that helps us drive where the SCAT crews, shoreline cleanup and assessment teams, go to assess the different beaches and find if there's any stranded oil. Thanks.
Mike has an addition to the answer.
I'm sorry, Tom, is that a fire department T-shirt you're wearing? So you may be aware of this, but for the benefit of everybody in the room, our corporate emergency response plan, which addresses many of the questions that you're interested in, is posted online on our corporate website, cpkcr.com. And I would encourage you to download it. If you give me your contact information, I'll email it out, and I'll provide the link as well to the TNRD.
Part of that question, Mike, was when did booms get deployed after the derailment? I happen to live in the vicinity of the area, so I can tell you that in the morning, one of the first things I saw was a boom being deployed in the morning after I was notified of the derailment in the ninth inning. I guess I observed a second boom that was deployed later that day around the first boom and around the gypsum car, so a much bigger area boom. On Monday of the week, I was invited to inspect the derailment from the water. Travis from Skeetchison was one of the people along on the boat, as well as our TNRD Emergency Operations Center people and Ministry of Environment. And further booms were placed on the south shore where there was evidence that some of the sheen and some of the emulsification had been moving to the west. So those are my observations as to when the booms were put in place on, I guess, Sunday and Monday. And I can tell you that today there was a boom put in place on the North Shore about a kilometer east of Frederick. And the explanation for that is a precautionary step that will be used for anything that takes place, anything that is observed on the North Shore, if anybody has any thoughts. So that's the timeline that I can tell you about booms in answer to your question.
So you know this lake goes up, goes down. So now it's going down. So the sand in front of my house, all along the beaches are going down. What happens when the water comes back up again? Is that stuff going to be still in that sand? And what are they going to do about it?
Thank you for that question.
That all leads back to the SCAT teams. They'll do a STR, shoreline treatment. And the idea is we know about the drop. The SCAT teams indicated it by where they saw the oil. And what they'll do is one option, they're still working on it, is called shoreline flushing. So they will come of course, the oil floats on water. You'll flush it, raise the oil up, mobilize it back in towards the boom so we can take care of it then. Thanks.
Sorry, just while we're discussing boom, because everyone likely either sees or can see the lake regularly, you may still see boom moving around the lake and being set up. This is part of this shoreline treatment that we're looking at. And so I just want to kind of make the statement that we're not setting up new containment around anything. This is part of the response like Chris just described. So yeah, I would expect to still see boats pulling boom around into different places and setting up anchors to get it in place to facilitate that. It is not for anything new or we're not containing anything new so much as we are responding to what's there already.
I thought I saw a question at the back there. Barb?
Hi, this is a hypothetical question, but I think everybody's thought about it. What if this train wreck was in Savona, downtown Savona, and 80,000 liters of jet fuel came out of those cars and down the streets of Savona? I know, I get it, again, it's hypothetical, but how can you reassure us that this isn't going to happen in the future?
Mike, could you take that question? Thank you.
Respectfully, I'm going to point out, we're here to talk about the incident in question tonight, and remind you that we strive to have zero accidents. I encourage you to take a look at that guide that I just mentioned. We're very proud of our industry leading safety record. When a derailment does occur, however, we do respond with all personnel and equipment necessary to execute an effective recovery and cleanup.
Laverne, I see you here. Could you give the microphone to Laverne, please?
My name is Laverne Bernier, a resident of Savona, a longtime resident of Savona. We've had derailments before in Savona. They've been it's been quite drastic. It was about 20 feet from my property line. And luckily, it wasn't chemicals or anything like that that was leaking from the cars at that time. It was cars that were in some of the box cars. My question is, this is the 10th of November. The accident happened on the 1st. I understand that Frederick was issued an order not to drink the water. Tobiano has shut their water intake down, I understand. This was for 12,000 liters, because that's what we heard in the very beginning. Now it's up to 70, 80,000 liters, which is a lot more than the 12,000. What has CP Kansas City done to help the citizens that live between Frederick, Cherry Creek, all the way to Ashcroft in regards to water? I myself am not drinking the water. I'm using bottled water, like you've got on your tables there. And I'm concerned, CP Kansas City is a big operation. They have the money, they have to do all this environmental study, which is good, we need it. But the average citizen from the 1st of November to today, has the railroad contacted any citizens to say, do you need water? Would you prefer to have fresh water brought in? I haven't heard anything like that, and it's a concern to me.
Thank you for that question, Laverne. I'll just make a comment first. When I first learned of this derailment, naturally we're concerned about personal injury and the safety of the people immediately around the derailment. And we established from CPKC that there were no injuries. Our focus at TNRD and our Emergency Operations Center people was on the water systems, the water intakes for the systems. TNRD operates the Savona water system, as you would know, and the TNRD operates the Wallachine system. There's a private operator for the Tobiano system, and there's a private operator for the Thompson Rivers Estate system. And then further downstream, of course, there's municipalities and they operate their systems. So the concern was at the intake of those community systems, not at the surface, but at the intake. And so we made that known to the Unified Command, and they agreed that deep water testing should take place as quickly as possible. My understanding is that the equipment was brought in, and the first of the deep water testings took place on the Wednesday. I think it was at 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock on the Wednesday, first at Tobiano and Savona. Later Wednesday evening, early Thursday morning, we learned that the fuel spill was not 12,700 liters, but the estimate, the preliminary number was 80,000, which gave all the more reason why we wanted to see those results. Those results came in on Thursday, and they confirmed that the water at the intake met BC drinking water standards. So that's a bit of a timeline of when we learned about the increase in the fuel spill and what we were doing about water testing even before we knew about the increase in the spill. We have here Tyrone McCabe from TNRD, our water utilities, that we can answer questions specifically about Savona and Wallachine. The Tobiano system, Blue Stem, has been in touch with this command center. They've been provided the answers, and they have responded because it's their system. They've responded the way they want to, as well as the operators of the Thompson Rivers Estate. A separate situation took place for the people in Frederick. Indeed, there was a call at 1 o'clock today with the folks on this panel and the residents, the individual private users of water systems. There's a strata corporation, there's a couple of individuals, and the discussion was around their private systems. It's not a public system, not as a robust system, perhaps being a private system. And I can tell you that they were able to answer or ask and answer, have their questions answered regarding drinking water. Mike, do you want to comment on what is taking place at Frederick in terms of water supply? And perhaps Interior Health could address the question about their recommendations to people in Frederick. Thank you.
Thank you again for the question. In answer to your specific question, we have made the offer of potable water to those residents in the interim. So, yeah, that's it. That's it for me. We have made that offer. Correct.
And perhaps Interior Health can explain what has transpired at Frederick that's different than elsewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the response in Frederick was a response because residents saw a fuel plume. So when we identified that, we recommended that they do not use the water because of that. The testing in Frederick actually has been negative, non-detect since that time. So that's again reassuring. But in Frederick, because the surface assessment, the shoreline assessment, I should say, demonstrates fuel, we think there might be remobilization of that fuel during the remediation. So we're communicating to the residents that we still don't think we strongly recommend that they don't use the water from the lake for their personal systems, that we don't know what depth it goes into the lake. They might be drawing from the surface. It's not regulated. So we're saying don't use the water until we know it's safe. And that'll be probably when the remediation is finished. And then we get some more testing of the water. We're obviously really concerned about public systems after we are aware of the volume of fuel into Kamloops Lake. We're really reassured there's been no sighting of any visible fuel plume, and that's been with repeated surveys from the air. So that's reassuring. And the repeated testing has been non-detect. And these are at the raw water at various levels at the intakes of the Tobiano and Savona systems. So again, that leaves us with a layer of reassurance. And one thing we haven't talked about today is, we've talked about the impact on the lake ecosystem, the animals in the lake. That lake is protecting the people around the lake because of the sheer volume. And I'm not the expert on the volume, but there is publications from the 1970s, for instance, that estimates that at this time of year in the fall, even when the flows are low, it's about 250 cubic meters per second. So that's about, 250,000 liters per second that the Thompson discharges into Kamloops Lake. So there really is, if this spill would have happened in a shallow water, a creek, it really would have been a different story on the concentrations that would have impacted downwater systems. But the surface area of the lake, the mean depth that we're getting of about 70 meters, it's all doing dilution to protect the people around the lake. So I think what we're seeing is that we don't expect any exposures through drinking water systems in Tobiano or Savona. That's our best assessment. The NEEC has done, we really reviewed with the National Environmental Emergency Center on whether they could model it even better for us. Can they come up with concentrations at different points in the lake? But that doesn't seem valid or doesn't seem clear. So, our best estimate from all the information that we have is that we do not expect any exposures, and we can keep, a monitoring plan with communities to start. So that's the basic premise that we're coming from. And maybe Puri, if you have anything further, yeah.
The only comment that I have, the biggest difference between the water system here and Tobiano, those are regulated water system, which means that they have a environmental health officer act as a drinking water officer that is continuous communication with the water purveyor. We continue working with them, discussing results. In fact, the drinking water officer for this system on Tobiano, last week, she drove here and took a sample herself from the intake as an additional sample. And those samples came back non-detectable for the parameters that were tested. So, and Tobiano chose to shut down the water. As you know, it was their decision. It was not something that we asked them to do. The decision was made at the time by the water purveyor.
Also, I'm just wondering if somebody could comment on the number of water tests and the ongoing monitoring.
So today we've grabbed 211 samples throughout the lake. We have a figure here, but I'm not sure whether we can pull it up. So the lower one, it kind of gives you the picture of the entire lake. The upper one is more centered around where the incident occurred, but it does show, multiple locations, multiple depths at each location, and none of those samples, except for the various mentioned before, like immediately after the derailment, showed anything other than non-detect.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. Dawn McGrath, Director of Operations for Skeetiston. The question I had is, if this is going into an insurance claim, what is the window of recovery that'll be provided to the residents for anything outside of, typically it's a 6-month window, which we know may not cover high water next spring. And I think that would probably be a relevant concern for all residents around the lakes. If they're starting to see something, what does that reporting mechanism look like? And second part of that is when we went through the Mount Poly spill and I was on site there, those grab samples, we had difficulty getting those results after the fact when it went to litigation. So who owns those water samples, and do the residents here have public access to them? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Who is best equipped to answer that question? The first question was about funding, and the second question was about ownership of water samples.
So I'm not going to be able to answer anything on insurance. I will just start off with that. Ownership of the water samples is a question that was raised earlier tonight already. And I don't have a definitive answer as to who the owner of that data is. I don't want to be able to commit that that is the province's data and that is something that we can share because I don't have that confirmed yet. So I don't want to tell you that that is the case and then have to turn around tomorrow and say that's incorrect. It is a question that has been raised, and it will be something we're looking into, is to make sure that any sample data that we have can be shared. That is unfortunately the best non-answer I can give you for that at this moment in time.
And to your first question, I don't have an answer for you. I will, but if we could talk afterwards, I'll get your contact information and I'll try and get you that answer.
The only reason I'm asking is because under EMBC's recovery standards, the typical window is 6 months when we're going through those processes for any claims or any work activity. And if the province hasn't given an extension on that as an emergency response unit table, we want to have that put in place up front to just let them know this is going to be a 1-year work recovery or something along those lines to help inform and give the residents assurance that through high water, CPKC will continue that work.
You've provided me a little bit more clarification on the EMCR guidance. So EMCR supplies that type of assurances for natural disasters when the province is acting in that role. In this case, CPKC is identified as who the province calls the responsible party, and the province operates on a polluter pays principle. So it is still going to be their question to answer. But it is not the same process as what you would deal with EMCR and their recovery mechanism. So yeah, just to be very clear, it's obviously a conversation that we're going to have to continue, and I would definitely encourage some sharing of some contact information to figure that information out. But yeah, it is not the same as the EMCR or EMBC process.
Okay, any other questions? Chief Drainey.
There is no way that you could say there was no loss, correct, for wildlife. There's no way you can say that. You did say it up there, but there's no way that saying that 100 smolts died or 100 fry died. There's really no way of knowing that. None of us knowing that to get that. The cumulative effects for these fish to make it to the ocean and back here is incredible. There's so much things that they have to go through, and this is just one more that they have to make it there and back. I just wanted to make that statement. But the question that I have is, who will have the say that the cleanup is over? So who will have that say? Who will say that things are complete and done?
Okay, thank you for that question. Have we had any indication of any fish mortality? Have you seen any fish mortality? Pardon me? Have you seen any occasion of fish mortality at this point?
So no, I agree, Chief. Thank you for the clarification that we can never be 100% certain. All I can say is that we have not observed any mortality that we could associate with this. I think I heard someone say something about birds. So we have collected 3 bird carcasses throughout the response, but to date, nothing has indicated that actually had anything to do with this. Those have all gone to a vet for necropsy, which is an animal autopsy, to verify those field observations. But yeah, there's nothing to indicate that they were associated with this, and we have not observed any direct mortalities. And I appreciate the difference between an observed mortality and the fact that it is a very large lake, and there's no way we can actually survey the entire bottom of the lake for that. So I do appreciate that there is a difference between those two things.
And this Chief Drainey's second question was, how do we know when it's over and who makes that decision? I wonder if if you gentlemen can comment on that process.
Do you want to take a first crack at that, Mike? Or no? I'd give you the first crack at it, but no. The how clean is clean is probably the toughest question in what we do here. We do look to do that through a series of things through unified command. So the federal government, provincial government, and the spiller are in unified command together, and we will have to come up with that. The federal and provincial governments use regulations and standards that we have in place, but that's the easy part. We have numerical standards. There will be more. And I'm just picking the right word, consultation might not be quite the right word with especially the local nation. They have the historical knowledge of the area, and we would look to that engagement to make sure that whatever standards the province looks to set as that standpoint meets those objectives. It is not a simple question, and it's not a simple answer of saying this person. It does become a longer conversation, and will not be settled in the coming days. It will be a longer conversation than that for sure.
This response structure is set up to bring in response partners, response agencies, departments, all together to make sure that various concerns are addressed. So in this cleanup, when we go through the SCAT, which was a shoreline cleanup and assessment, to determine the characteristics and distribution of the oil on the shoreline that everybody's concerned about, we'll do the shoreline treating, which comes from the environmental unit. The environmental unit is open and has a lot of these response partners and agencies. And I believe some of the First Nations, they've already taken part in it. So I think the next steps are those shoreline treating, where we will flush till we see no visible oil, and we'll flush as many times as required for the SOP, standard operating procedure. But we are also looking at taking sediment samples to then verify if what levels are of oil, if any, are in those sediments. Thanks.
And I'll just round out. I don't have anything to add to the answers here because I think they completely address the question. Thank you.
Gentleman at the back.
Graham Richardson, Tobiano. Thank you for coming out, you guys, tonight and giving us some information on this. I appreciate it. My question is, I know you've done a lot of testing in the water. On the surface, can you share information on the furthest distance that you've actually been able to detect any of the residue of the gas? And if you've been beneath the water, if it's mixed into it, because I assume that it mostly is on the surface. Can you tell us any distances that you've been able to find it on the surface and down in the depths?
Thank you for that question. Who would be best equipped to answer that question? Can we get a microphone, please?
So just to clarify your question, is it how far we detected it in the water or detected it on the shoreline, or both? Okay, so typically our water samples were done in, especially let's say take an example for the water intakes. We would take a surface sample within 15 centimeters of the surface, then we would go mid-water, and then basically just off the bottom. So that would be a typical sampling location, sampling pattern. All those samples were non-detect. I think as was mentioned earlier, the only detections we had, which were slightly above freshwater, were immediately after the derailment, just outside the boom curtain. Everything else in the entire lake, from upstream to downstream, showed non-detect.
Yes, sir. We'll get a mic. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just had a
uh,
question.
Chair Rhodes.
Someone mentioned 250 250 cubic meters per second coming into the lake. Does anyone have an idea what the capacity or volume of Kamloops Lake is at this time of year?
I just kind of shake my head a little at this question because this is not a question I would generally have any answer for. I happened to look it up yesterday by chance. So the median volume of the lake is 3.1 cubic kilometers, which if I do my math right, I believe is 3.1 trillion liters. It is a very large lake.
Gentleman down the aisle. Thank you, Alex.
Okay, just a quick question. The flushing, I don't understand the flushing. If I'm out there on the beach next summer and I'm with my granddaughter and all of a sudden all this film comes up, do I get a hold of Mike Grenier? Or sorry, Mr. Grenier? Or do I get
Mike
it like
works.
how?
Hey, you works.
Like this flushing, I don't understand how you're gonna flush when it could be 5 feet up on the shore right now. I don't understand the flushing.
So what is flushing? I think we can review that. And perhaps while you're at it, you could talk about how you're absorbing what you are absorbing. If you could talk about the peak.
I might just take your seat too.
Okay.
Stay here closer. The first and easiest question is if someone sees any indication, and this isn't just for this incident, if you're observing oil on any body of water, I mean, the simplest solution is there is a phone number for spill reporting, and I know it. It's 1-800-663-3456, or more. Yeah. So or the RAP line is another option that will come first to the province. All that information also is shared with the federal government and with Interior Health, all of whom know about this incident. And if it is something that is related, we would re-engage CPKC or any other responsible party for a different incident. Well, we will engage as soon as you call us. As for flushing, he also knows how to get a hold of us. I think I gave him my business card. So as for the flushing, the SCAT surveys that have been talked about frequently, they are not just looking at the water's edge. So they are going all the way up to the high water mark of where the lake goes at its highest and surveying from there all the way down to where the water is today. So we have talked about where we have identified some oiling around the lake. That is above that high water mark already. And I've heard some people talk about some sand in front of their house that isn't normally there, things like that. That it is up in that area that is often underwater where we're seeing it and where we're trying to address that through the flooding or flushing. So what that does, again, we put that boom out in the water in front of that area and we use a pump and we pump water from the lake up onto where that oiled area is to basically float the oil up and get it to an area where we can collect it using sorbent pads or booms, and then agitate with rakes to encourage more evaporation, get more of it out of the soil to get it to where it is. And that happens repetitively until there's a point where it's no longer recoverable and it's just evaporating. Yeah, and that's kind of that's flushing 101 very quickly. Chris? Nope, Chris is happy with that. Okay.
Just my observations on Monday when we went out to look at the booms and the what was the sheen and the emulsification along the shoreline. They were already deploying a peat product. The concept being that the peat will absorb the the sheen or the emulsion, and then they pick up the peat, and they triple bag it, and they take it to a qualified waste disposal site. And for the folks that live in Tobiano, you'll see a large volume of white bags on the shore. That is the peat that they are transporting back and forth from Tobiano to these boom sites. Hello. Oh, and the only other thing I'll say is that when I was down there, I think it was a Friday, there was quite a procedure where the people coming off the boats were washing the boots, cleaning that up. There's a couple trailers that are on the boat launch side where they're receiving this material for transport to the qualified sites. So that's something that I found interesting. I thought you might find interesting too. The next question. Chief Godfreyson.
Yeah, too, I want to thank you guys too for being here. I know I've sat in front of the firing squad many times, in my time of leadership. It's these difficult conversations what defines, our communities and our safety of who we are and, where we come from. Listening to the talk about water levels, I think about, the South Thompson, and how low the South Thompson is in the water level of the South Thompson. And I had the fortune of going up to the North Thompson today. The North Thompson River is just as low. And I think about our environment with our snow shed, and the lack of snow we have been getting over the last 10 years. I remember, I'm not that old, but I remember being a kid when the snow used to be as high as the fences. We're lucky if we get a skiff of snow now. So when we have an environmental catastrophe like we've had here on our watershed, it hurts us. The studies that have been done, I appreciate that. But the reality is how much can our ecosystem sustain? How much of an impact can our watershed have? Because the reality of our water, if we don't have water, we don't survive. This last 3 or 4 years living out at Tobiano, we've been limited to restricting our water, of how much we can water our yards, how much water we can use. And this is going to put another factor on our water usage. And this is just, one incident, in one part of the territory. When we look at the rail line that runs all the way from coast to coast, I think our railroads need to be put at a higher standard of safety. Track speed needs to be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Just hold on, just hold on. And the other thing is, when we look at, the world that we do live in, we get fined if we do something wrong and we're not following environmental procedures or environmental standards, especially if we're doing new construction or, something happens that, within what we do. So my question, to you, Mike, is what are you going to do to enforce the public safety of these railroads, not only CP, but CN, who runs across the other side of the river? You know, we've got two major rail lines running on both sides of on both sides of our watershed, up both rivers, the North and the South Thompson. This isn't an isolated incident related just to Kamloops, in my opinion. I've been out of politics for about 8 years now, but I always pay attention to things. You know, and I see industry is not held to the same standards as a local developer. So let's make sure that the industry here, the railroads, are going to be held accountable, you know, by a fine that's relevant to the catastrophe that it's caused.
Thank you, Shane, for those comments and that observation. And I appreciate that you have the confidence that I have the authorities that to do anything about these things. I think what's important here is that the TNRD, your elected officials are bringing this to your attention, sharing information with you. CPKC is understands that they're accountable. They're accountable to the agencies that are here today who will make these decisions. There's the Transportation Safety Board that will make a decision, and those agencies are in a position to regulate the railway, and I am not. But I think what's important is that we get the information, and I want to tell you that there isn't a question that I have asked where CPKC hasn't earnestly gone about to get me an answer. And it may take a while to get an answer, but they have attempted to be transparent and communicative. And we want to keep on that standard so that that we get this information flow and we can respond to things as they develop. As to the larger picture, I'm a local area elected official, and I think that some of your comments lie perhaps at the federal level.
With our local representatives and constituents, I bring it to your attention, or you take it to the next level.
Well, we're here tonight. Next questions. At the back, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joanne. I'm from Tobiano. Thank you all for being here. I'm hoping you can help me understand how the initial estimates of fuel spillage went from negligible in empty rail cars to 12,000 liters to 80,000 liters. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Who would like to talk about the history of the volume of released fuels? Mike, are you going to start? Why don't you give us the background, and that would be helpful.
We are when we begin that assessment, we are very careful to put qualifications on it that it is preliminary, because we are still very much in the assessment. As the information is developed, it is communicated. But at no point did anybody call it final. It was a preliminary assessment, and we expected it to change, which in fact it did. You could perhaps add a little more color to that process.
So yeah, we understand in this case to hear 12,000 and then see that shoot up to 80,000 is an alarming amount. And that is just the reality of the ongoing assessment that initial 12,000 liters was what the responders on scene could see and verify as to what had happened. And especially with complexities of some of the rail cars being in the lake and on very steep slopes, it made getting accurate numbers challenging. It was alarming to everyone, the government agencies and CPKC as well, to hear that there was a sudden change like that as well. And you'll notice that yes, at one point in time, the report out was for 80,000 liters, again, because that was an estimate. And once we were able to get the cars to a stable location where they could be accurately measured, we actually realized that the number was lower. And so we were able to back that down to around 70. I'll say it is unfortunate that a big jump did occur, but it was just a process of trying to get the best information that was available out. And I will say as kind of from the seat of the regulator, I'm not comfortable just saying we don't know yet. We don't know yet, and I would rather have to get up here and tell you that yes, we were wrong when we said 12,000 to start with, than to sit here and for several days say, well, we don't know yet, or we're still determining that. So it was an unfortunate jump as the assessment went on, but that was the reality of the situation, and us trying to get the best information we could as fast as we could.
Thank you for that. Next questions. Gentleman at the back, and then the fella beside our friend. Who's that?
Good evening. Quick question.
Name and location, please.
My name is Roger Nickel. I'm from Kamloops. I have a background in aviation fuel, so I'm kind of ask a couple of questions. Sampling at Ashcroft, because if we were all talking about the lake, what about further downstream? And also, was it only jet fuel? You keep on saying jet fuel. Was it only jet fuel that was spilled in the lake, or was there diesel from the units, or were the units contained? And other than that, that's it.
Thank you for that question.
I agreed to talk on the wrong topics. So I will defer the sampling and sampling down to Ashcroft to you, Kevin. I think we'll get to that in a second. As for the products and the quantities, so yes, Jet A1 is the only product that we confirmed released. So there were multiple types of tank cars involved, but the only tanks that were full both had Jet A1 in them. There was some maybe misquoting or misrepresentation of what those tanks had, but I confirm, yeah, both tanks Jet A1. There was one locomotive that derailed in the derailment. It stayed upright and on the tracks, and its fueling system was not impacted, so we didn't have any loss of diesel from the locomotive. Yep. I can reiterate the correct question again. So the difference between, so you're asking, just because there is differences, different chemical properties for diesel and kerosene. And yeah, that was important to identify at the start. What chemicals had spilled.
And I'll validate, there was release from 2 cars only, and it was Jet A. Pardon me? They were full. It wasn't, they weren't, the cars did not release the full amount in each car. So what was released was less than the total volume in each car.
Okay, so because of my background, the dangerous goods document, the TDG, would have shown what was in the tanks, obviously, and then the amount of product that was pumped out of the tanks would be negotiable. So then you pretty much have an accurate number to how much fuel was released. I'm doing this for everybody else here that doesn't understand the fuel mechanisms and TDGs.
Yeah, you're correct. So the combined volume of both rail cars was well in excess of 70,000 liters. Each rail car, I believe, I was told was 105,000 liters was its capacity, so both tanks did leak, but not their full amount. So it was not a catastrophic failure of either tank. Before the tanks could be removed from the environment, the fuel that was on board had to be offloaded. So that also affected why the numbers would go up and down, and why it went from 80,000 to 70,000 liter estimate. Because once the tanks were completely offloaded, we were able to see how much product came off of those tanks more accurately. And that's how the number of 70,000 was settled on. So yeah, a bunch of the product stayed in containment and was then removed as part of the response.
Thank you for that question. The gentleman with the hat on, and then that's it. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jerry Bates from Savona. The question I have is, I'd like to know, and I think probably everybody here would like to know, what other, call them toxic or deadly to human substances are being transported up and down on the rail lines on a daily basis? I know it's long, but substances being liquid, air, ice, whatever, gases, substances that we need to lay awake at night and worry about on the next excitement you have with dumping stuff in the water.
Thank you for that question. Mike, do you want to answer that possibly? Oh, come on.
Railroads in Canada, United States, do not get to decide what products we will and will not transport. Canadian transportation law, American transportation law mandates us to ship all manner of products tendered to us. There are specific regulations around the transportation of dangerous goods. You can learn more about that on the Transport Canada website. That information is also contained in our emergency response plan that I spoke about a little bit earlier. We have to have the systems in place to ensure the safety of all the commodities tendered to us.
Thank you for that answer. There was another hand up. This gentleman. Hi.
My name's Al Belsham. I live in TRE. My concern is, why were we not notified the minute that this train derailed, being that we draw water from the river down below? I think that's a big hiccup, either on health department or wherever. We should have been notified downriver that this had happened, so we could shut our system off right away.
Thank you for that question. And I can tell you from the timeline of the TNRD, we received a phone call. I received a phone call from Mike telling me about the derailment. And my first call was to Scott Hildebrand, our CAO, who also operates the TNRD Emergency Operations Center. And Ministry of Environment had been contacted and was part of that decision-making tree. And that information was relayed, at least by me, first thing in the morning when there was light. And I shared that with our constituents, Ministry of Environment and Interior Health. I can't tell you what your timelines are, but perhaps you could speak to them.
So on the initial response, so Interior Health was involved with local governments and Ministry of Environment on November 1st, and there was an assessment done. So I think on November 1st, the assessment was that downstream water systems would not likely be impacted based on the information that we had at that time. So that was our, the assessments are always being done in real time, and the risk management, if there is risk, then communicating to communities and working with drinking water operating systems, the water operators, to make the best assessments. Yeah.
I totally understand that, but you were only quoted a $12,000 or 12,000 liter loss, whereas you wound up with 70,000. Now, being that it was 70,000, I strongly feel we should have been notified ASAP. I wound up finding out this happened from my granddaughter, who was reading an article on the internet at 9 o'clock on the 2nd, which came by a long way around for me to find out what was going on. So I really think that it should be a policy that anything downstream from a spill like this should be notified. No kilometer restriction or anything. If there's a spill, we're notified and kept up to space from there.
Well, thank you for that. And on the Wednesday, actually, so we were still responding to things that were being informed of. So when we were aware of the visible plume at Frederick, then even before we knew that the volume had increased, actually, we tried to work with TNRD and community to try to manage that. And so by Wednesday, we started getting some testing results as well that actually were showing non-detects in the water. So we were constantly making assessments. And if the team would have felt that the water system, community water system was at risk, we would have worked with the water systems and issued a do not use. Yeah. But our assessments throughout that early part was that was not the case. Yeah.
And just to the early part of your question, you can see how our notification structure works when an incident occurs. It is part of our corporate emergency response plan published on the CPKC website.
And I'll just add that we were advocating for deep water testing prior to knowing that the amounts had increased. And we were concerned that, is there a difference between surface testing and deep water testing? And the only way to answer the question that we anticipated you would be asking is by testing at the deep water, at the source, which is what we were asking for. The equipment was being flown in to do the deep water testing. The deep water testing had taken place on Wednesday, and the results were anticipated Thursday from the test results. Wednesday evening, we were informed about the increase in the volume of material that had been released. But that just made it all the more why we wanted to have the answers to the deep water testing. So that gives a bit of a perspective on what took place when.
Well, where he lives, did you test down there or did you test at the site?
So I can tell you that our preliminary request for testing was in the public systems immediately close to the system, which would have been Tobiano and Savona. And in consultation with Director Thorpe, we wanted to include Wallachine and Thompson Rivers Estates. That was done. I think the deep water testing was done the following day, and those downstream communities also confirmed that the deep water testing met BC drinking water standards. The individual operators of the private systems, they are the operators of those systems. The decisions that they make with that information, and they were provided that information, they make those decisions. The TNRD makes decisions on behalf of the Savona water system and the Wallachine system. And it was, as we say, deemed safe, met BC drinking water standards, and we continue to test.
Okay, what I was saying earlier, they said earlier that a lot of it got away from them. So if it got away from the containment site, you don't think it'd be down by his house?
regardless of how much got out, we were concerned about deep water testing because that is the water that you're drawing for drinking water source. And that was what our ask was of the emergency operations team. We have Ministry of Environment, we have Interior Health, who have the responsibility, if they feel that there is a concern, as they did in Frederick, to notify residents. But we didn't get that for Savona. We didn't get that for Thompson Rivers Estates. We didn't get that for Wallachine, and we didn't get it for Tobiano. We got quite the opposite, that we meet BC drinking water standards. So I hope that answers your question. Can we come back to that if it's related to this issue? Okay, go ahead.
It's about how deep the water is there and how deep the water is in the lake. It gets shallow down by where he lives. So it means a little bit more than what the depth is here.
Yes, at the end of the day, does the water at the water intake meet BC drinking water standards? Has it been tested there? And the answer to that is yes, it did, regardless of the depth of the water intake. Well, I realize you're talking, and I'm sort of distilling some of the things that I have heard asking the same questions that you're asking. The assumption in the question is that 70,000 liters entered the lake. 70,000 liters left the cars on the shoreline, and some of it went into the lake. So it isn't that it all went into the lake. The car didn't go into the lake that had the jet fuel. It leaked onto the shoreline and onto the lake. And so you've heard about the flushing, which is, I can't tell you, and I don't know if these gentlemen can tell you. Can you tell us if you know what percentage of the 70,000 liters is in the lake versus on the shoreline?
So, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, please. The cars were removed 2 days ago, both of those cars. So now, 2 and 3 days ago, those cars have been removed. Crews are going to go in and assess that where they were sitting. However, there are some safety factors, safety issues that are slowing that process. So as you accurately said, it leaked through there, through the ground. So how much is trapped on that slope right now? We don't know, and it still has to be looked at. Thank you.
The lady with her hand up, please, from Skeetchison, and then Chief Drainey.
This question is for CPKC. I just had a understanding that there was a bit of an issue in the same area with the rail line a couple weeks prior. And if this was the leading cause factor to the system failure, and I think that goes relevant to the comments and advocacy of the leadership to bring this up to the standards. And what was the requirement to put those rail cars back on for your system checks and safety inspections to avoid this from happening?
And just related to this question, I did receive from Terry Muldoon from Frederick, had they found the cause of the first derailment on September 12th? That's related to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. The 2 incidents were not in the same location, and both remain under investigation.
Chief Drainey.
I'd like to address my question here. At Skeetchison, we have a well, but it's meters away from the river. But I've been told that it gets influenced by the river. So can you assure me that that water is safe? Chuck.
Thank you. So if it's a well under the influence of surface water, we have to be careful because the water in the lake, it can communicate with the well. So I think working with the environmental health officer for the community. So if there's a First Nations Health Authority, environmental health officer, and we can work together with Interior Health and kind of connect and review any risks. So we haven't had detects, in further downstream in the lake. We haven't had detects in the outflow of the river. So our baseline, our best assessment is we are very reassured, but if there are concerns, then we can do some testing for the well. Purya, anything?
Yeah, basically when you mentioned it's under influence of surface water, depending on like what that study shows, sometimes they're talking about under influence for bacteriological, sometimes it's chemical, depends the proximity and the soil quality and how much of water you withdraw. This could be like potentially a concern. So as Doctor mentioned, the best way to operate, if it is within the nation's land, reach out to your environmental health officer and raise this concern, and we would work collaboratively with them to make sure that it's been like tested and looked after.
Gentleman, second row.
Hi, Andrew Karras, counselor for Skeetson. I used to be the water tech for Skeetson, and that system, the aquifer, is influenced by the lake. So that's our biggest concern because there is arsenic and stuff in that system already. We have reverse osmosis. And just to be safe, we did get all the filters cleaned just today, but it's still a worry that it could be sitting inside the aquifer instead.
So the previous answer, do you want to expand on that?
Just due to it being influenced within the aquifer, not actually being the lake, who's to say that that is not sitting in our aquifer now rather than sitting in the lake?
So if that question wanted to be asked, I think you said that you would consult with the Indigenous authority on site. You would work collaboratively with that society or that agency, sorry. Okay, all right. Any other questions that are coming to mind? Mike.
Mike Anderson. I'm a part-time resident of Savona, a longtime resident of the area, and I've been working for Skeetson Natural Resources for the last 25 or 30 years. CPKC has some major impacts on the natural environment within the territory it runs through. It's presently running on unceded Secwepemc territory. I heard the chief drainer here say that there's a lot of salmon runs in that lake and in that river, and they're getting to be in pretty bad shape. I know that from experience of working with the fisheries department for the last 30 years. There's also there's a principle within environmental impacts with companies and whatnot where they have what they call offsets. If a company's creating environmental impacts on the land, they usually work with the First Nation and have some kind of an offset for that impact that they're creating. And in view of the fact that CP has created a lot of impacts in the past and is obviously still creating them, and that fish are very sensitive species, and as the chief says, I mean, we can't count the dead fry out there, but we can definitely say that the fishery has been impacted. In view of that, would CPKC give any consideration to partnering with Skeetson Band to assist the disappearing fish runs in the system? I also heard the chief say that we've just got a new hatchery at Skeetson, or rebuilt a hatchery. We've been running a program for some 30 years and whatnot, and it'd sure be nice to have an industrial partner to work with to start rebuilding these runs within the Thompson system. not just for First Nations, but for all of us, because the fishery has definitely been impacted in my lifetime, and a lot of our runs are actually disappearing, you know. Thompson River steelhead are just about extirpated from the system. Thompson River cohead and coho have been on the species at risk list for quite some time now. And the fishery really needs some assistance.
Thank you for that question, Mike. Mike, could you answer that, please?
Mike, thanks for the question. I think it deserves a follow-up directly. So I'll just table it at that point tonight. Thank you.
Any questions? Any other questions? No? Well, then what I'd like to do is wrap this up. I want to thank you for coming out and asking those questions. It is going to be on videotape, so people who haven't been able to ask questions, you've asked questions on their behalf. So thank you for that. I want to thank MLA Dirkston and invite him if he has any thoughts or comments, and then I'll wrap it up here. 1 second.
Thanks very much, Mike. I took a lot of notes tonight here, and I have a ton of concerns myself. And certainly I do want to thank Mike specifically, Michael Grenier, because he has been on this file and really trying to represent the area. But I think Mike deserves a round of applause. He's done a bang up job. I do want to thank, you know, the agencies obviously that are here and CPKC, but I think there's a lot more questions to come in the days ahead. You know, I noted questions about what is actually on our rail lines, and I know it's a lot of stuff. And I think that's obviously concerning, but I will say I've also worked with Mike over the last couple of days from CPKC, and they've been quite transparent with me, and I hope that will continue. But I know that it's a serious challenge, and I know it's a serious issue right throughout the entire province. But I agreed with the chief that mentioned, you know, it starts with local representation, and that's where we can do, I think, a little bit of extra push towards the governments, you know, whether they be federal or provincial, you know, definitely on this file. So I don't think we're anywhere near done on this. Obviously, there'll be lots to come, and I'm so glad that folks came out here today from the area, especially from Tobiano and all throughout the whole area. So it's great to see people here from downstream as well. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for that, MLA Dirksen. We have some coffee, some donuts. If you want to ask questions directly of the gentlemen here, they've all agreed to stay, or any of the TNRD folks, if you have any questions. Really appreciate you coming out. And gentlemen, thank you for those tough questions, and the ones you can answer and the ones you're going to go back and get some information on. Thank you. All right. I think with that, we'll declare this meeting closed. Thank you.